If you'd like to become more familiar with the workings of your PC or Mac hardware and software, Bits and Bytes 2 offers several useful learning materials for beginner and intermediate learners. For $34, you can purchase the comprehensive and easy-to-follow Bits and Bytes User's Guide, containing basic instruction in WordPerfect, Windows, PageMaker, Paintbrush, and more. Also included are PC and Macintosh diskettes with sample files. For $79, you can order 2 video cassettes of the series, each 90 minutes long. To order materials or for more information, call TVO Home Studies. That's 445-5333 in Toronto. Long distance, call toll-free 1-800-663-1800.
You liking me?
Oh, much like old thin man.
Uniform gets him every time.
I never worked with an actor I felt knew as well about what he himself could accomplish and be on the screen and be right and honest.
What I find is so many pictures that they are slow. And I feel that the only thing that music can do is give the picture pace by moving it. There's some odd rhythm so that you can push the picture along.
First have dinner, then turn on TVO every weeknight at 7:30 and feast on Delia Smith's summer collection, Mediterranean Cookery, Burt Wolfe Eating Well, A Cook's Tour of France, A Taste of Japan, Italian Regional Cookery, and Madhur Jaffrey's Indian and Far Eastern cookeries. Don't even try to resist these delectable shows. Tune in to TVO every weeknight at 7:30 for TV that whets your appetite all summer long.
Hi, I'm Steve Paikin. Please join me Wednesday, June 30th for a special TVO presentation From Quill to Keyboard, honoring creative applications of technology to education. You'll meet the winners of this year's TV Ontario Teachers Awards. You'll also get a sneak preview at some of the new technologies that will shape tomorrow's learning environments, from video discs to virtual reality. So don't miss the TV Ontario Teachers Awards, simulcast June 30th at 8 p.m. on TVO and Lachette.
This is TVO.
Welcome to TVO Home Studies. Coming up next, Exploring Ontario's Provincial Parks, a 5-part family adventure series produced in honor of the 100th anniversary of Ontario's park system in 1993. Journey into beautiful landscapes and explore your relationship with nature in these visually stunning dramas and documentaries. At the end of the program, we'll tell you how you can order a copy of the guidebook that accompanies the series. It has all the information you'll need on the 256 provincial parks in Ontario. We are also offering a gorgeous coffee table book, Islands of Hope, which celebrates Ontario's parks and wilderness in writings and photographs. And now, stay tuned. It's time to explore.
What makes camping in a wilderness park so rewarding is the emotional experience it evokes. When we tap into the power and the majesty of the land, we tap into a forgotten part of ourselves. When we become aware of our natural environment, we awaken our sense of responsibility for it, the responsibility of protecting environments where man's interference is kept to a minimum. Ontario's provincial parks protect representative and distinct natural habitats so that all of us and our children will continue to be enriched by them. In the upcoming documentary, you'll discover a place where the Ojibwe once hunted, and the voyageurs paddled their fur-laden canoes. In Quetico Provincial Park, you'll meet people who have experienced for themselves the intricacy and awesome power of the natural systems at work. People who are able to recognize their place within those systems.
In northwestern Ontario lies a wilderness preserve known as Quetico. About the size of Prince Edward Island, it's a place of great natural value and historical importance. In the early spring of 1991, Quetico Provincial Park lost a good friend. For 20 years, Shan Walshe was the park naturalist and a tireless advocate of wilderness. The following interview was recorded a year before his death.
In Quetico, it's just like it was 100 years ago, 200 years ago, almost the same. So it's just, nice to know that a place like Quetico exists. So if you have to get out of the modern world and escape, that there's some place that you can escape to.
Shan saw the wildness, the wild landscapes, as an expression of the spirituality of man. I think he felt that if you wanted to appreciate your significance, your worth, that you had to go to a landscape that was entirely natural.
Shan Walshe loved Quetico, and he shared his love of the park through both his writing and the park's interpretive programs for visitors.
He could take the smallest piece of natural history and turn it into something very, very exciting. And it would be indelibly etched on the mind of anybody who listened to him speak. And there are, I would hazard to guess that almost 100% of the people who have come into the park and who have met Shan over the years, even just once, will remember him as being a part of the park.
I like a simple way of life. When I'm out in nature, I'm just a little tiny thing, in this great big world of nature, and the human really is very insignificant. I like to remind myself of that by going out in the park, so I become more humble.
As I go into the park, as I go into this park, or indeed any wilderness area, you invariably have to start responding to that land. You are subject to wind, you're subject to rain. You get a feeling that you're just one entity among a whole diverse mosaic of living forms. For me personally, I think that it's sort of like a sanctuary.
Where are you coming from?
Down around there somewhere.
Where'd you put in?
At Ely.
At Ely?
Ely?
Did you come up through the Echo Trail or how?
Yes, we did.
How's your trip so far?
It's wonderful.
I'm glad you're enjoying it.
Get away from the city for a while.
You're going to go in for a swim?
You bet.
Well, a lot of people that come up from the United States are trying to get away from the hubbub and the noise and the pressure that they're under. One gentleman was here with his family. He was not a professional wilderness buff or anything like that. He just wanted to get away. He was under such pressure. He brought raw vegetables and things like that up. He didn't know what actually he was doing, but he had a hell of a good time. Because when he talked to me on the dock, he said, Joe, if I didn't know there was a place left like this on Earth, he said, I might as well shoot myself.
The first year I was here, I was aware more and more of people coming from the cities, and uptight, I guess you'd say, or tired out or something, and they're very impatient and not terribly polite, and they would go into the park for say 4, 5, 6 days, and I can remember so many times the gate people saying that so-and-so came back and apologized and was just a totally different person having been in the park for 3 or 4 or 5 days. And I began to look at the master plan and how we talk about recreation as being one of the facets for Quetico, and it just seemed to me that it was more a recreation of each of us. Perhaps the beauty did it, or the time alone, or just the quiet silence. But I just thought that it made Quetico a real treasure, and of such value to us as citizens of the country. When I went to school, I wanted to learn about the history right where I lived. And I think for me, it makes history come to life. And, you know, just walking on the beach one year, I picked up it was like a knife. And, you know, you're just about shaking because you know the last person that touched it could be 3,000 years ago. I guess that's the kind of history I like.
The human history of the region began about 9,000 years ago, when nomadic hunters roamed this ancient land in search of game. Woodland cultures, probably descendants of these early peoples, were most likely responsible for these rock paintings. Found at over 30 sites, they are the greatest concentration of pictographs in all of North America.
To us, they are still quite a mystery. To them, they're sacred places, and the Lac LaCroix healer has said that, you know, they would value if we respected them as well.
You come here and you look around, and with the exception of an occasional dock, an occasional ranger station, this hasn't changed in probably 10,000 years, with the exception of at some point in time, someone put some pictographs on the rocks.
Yeah, and it's interesting that like, these people were looking at basically the exact same thing that you're looking at. They're at 500, maybe 1,000 years ago. They're paddling around in their canoe, and it's a good spiritual feeling.
Over 300 years have passed since a son of New France first guided his canoe across the clear waters of Quetico. Ojibwe people taught the French how to survive here, and they showed them routes to the west that would ultimately become major arteries for the fur trade. By 1763, France was no longer a North American power. The old fur trade routes through Quetico now rang to the sounds of the Nor'westers. For a brief but eventful period, Fort William served as the major inland headquarters of the Northwest Company. The daily life of this 19th century fur trading post is recreated every summer for visitors to the Thunder Bay region. In its heyday, Fort William was the gateway to the west. Canoe brigades set off each summer, passing through Quetico on their way to the trading frontiers.
1, 2, 3.
Fur traders were not the only travelers through Quetico. In 1844, 4 gray nuns en route to Manitoba traveled these same waters. The sisters enjoyed the wild scenery but found the voyageurs' language and songs, to say the least, indelicate. To cover their embarrassment, the good sisters spent much of their time praying aloud and singing hymns.
I had read Blair Fraser's write-up of retracing the routes of the voyageurs, and then I had heard that Eric Morse had proposed that the best way for diplomats coming to Canada to learn about Canada was to get in a canoe and experience it, and it really caught my imagination. I just felt I had to do that, and that was why we came. But then it wasn't long till I was back into the Ojibwe times, so I'd forgotten the voyageurs. Although at the top of the river, I always stop and think of the Coureur de Bois, paddling exactly that same river.
Like the voyageur, today's traveler through Quetico is profoundly affected by its wildness. For naturalist Sig Olsen, one perfect dawn inspired him to write, "The lake was breathing softly, as in sleep. Rising and falling, it seemed to me to absorb like a great sponge all the sounds of the earth. It was a time of quiet." Standing there alone, I felt alive, more aware and receptive than ever before. A shout or a movement would have destroyed the spell. This was a time for silence, for being in peace with ancient rhythms and timelessness, the breathing of the lake, the slow growth of living things. Here the cosmos could be felt and the true meaning of attunement. Silence belongs to the primitive scene. Without it, the vision of unchanged landscape means little more than rocks and trees and mountains. But with silence, it has significance and meaning. Confederation in 1867 brought the need for an all-Canadian route to the west. Construction began a year later on the Dawson Road, which followed the old fur trade route through Quetico. At its height, some 2,000 people made the trek westward in a single season. The journey could take a month. Belongings had to be unloaded, then reloaded along the many rugged portages. To this could be added the vagaries of weather and the swarms of mosquitoes and black flies that accompanied spring. It was not an easy trip. By the turn of the century, activity in Quetico shifted to trapping and lumbering. To provide meat for the camps, vast numbers of moose were killed. This overhunting was a key factor that eventually led to the region being declared a provincial park in 1913.
When the park was first set aside, it was set aside by a group of people who I think probably envisioned it as a very large and important recreational area, wilderness recreational area, valuable for its canoeing resource. And then looking, I guess, around at the time and recognizing that development was moving west and things were changing and forests were being cut down, they saw the value of preserving this as a wilderness recreational environment, as a canoeing environment. And that is what it has become known for over the years on an international basis.
Despite Quetico's classification as a park, extensive logging operations continued. During World War I, great stands of white and red pines were cut to provide raw materials for the war effort. Logging persisted until 1971, when public pressure finally put an end to it. 2 years later, Quetico was classified a wilderness park, an area not to be adversely affected by human activities, and held in perpetuity for the people of Ontario.
Well, I think in having any wilderness area, specifically a wilderness park like Quetico, you invariably are going to protect the plants and the animals that reside in that park. Equally important, and I think even more so, is that in a large area like this, you're protecting the habitat. Here you have space. You're protecting the processes, the predator-prey relationships. You're They're protecting the food chains. The animals are there and they're free to function so that the wolves have the room they need to find the moose to sustain that pack. The moose have the habitat in which to move so they can find proper habitat in each one of the seasons.
All of nature is so intricately interconnected that you know, if you touch one little part of it, it throws the whole thing out of kilter, out of balance. And man is really just touching the surface as far as understanding this intricacy of the natural order of things. So preserving an area like Quetico so that we can always go back there and say, here is an area that is natural, the way it has been for millions of years, the way it has evolved through the millions of years. It's a natural laboratory for scientists to come and study so that they can see where they have gone wrong in their mismanagement outside the park.
Outside the park, man is changing the complexion of the land. And sometimes we have to know, are we doing a good job or are we not doing a good job? And how do we measure the success of what we're doing? How do we measure how effectively we're doing it? Well, we have to measure those things to get an idea of just how successful we are. I think we have to go back to a natural system. We have to go back to a benchmark, a reference point. And these wilderness parks, I think, serve as those reference points.
Quetico Park, as a wilderness area, offers a wilderness experience, and that's certainly the experience that people come here for. But coming here, there's also needs to be a responsibility that has to be accepted by the park visitor, which allows them to look after themselves while they're here in the park and allows them to look after the environment as well. When you get into a place like Quetico, this is 500,000 hectares or around 1 million acres. And there aren't any roads in here. They're on their own, and they need to prepare for that. The experience that we're here to provide is a wilderness experience, and there's some very important things that are attached to that, and certainly solitude is one of those. And the quota system attempts to try to limit the number of people coming in. So around the park we have 6 entry stations or entry points, and each entry point limits the number of people who can enter the park on any given day.
The ministry has set up guidelines, rules and regulations, orders that we must follow, and they're not difficult orders to follow because I am pleased with what I have to do here. Vera looks after the office, I look after the maintenance. We have a great time meeting a lot of people. Once I got a look inside of Quetico, that was it for me and my wife. When we first came here, I saw this and I said, Vera, that is it. It'll take a case of powder to move me out of here now. I like the way that some people come in and they tell me about the Quetico Park, and like I said, it makes me feel good. I'd like to read a few of these to you. Last night, my dad and I watched the sunset light up the sky a brilliant orange, then red, then a shade of purple that would be hard to find in an interior decorator showroom. The quiet was almost deafening. What a marvelous place. We had a very restful trip. 2 weeks, good weather, okay fishing. Judy didn't have the baby in the woods. She's 7 months pregnant. Trip was easy though, flying out will be fun. My first trip was 50 years ago as a bride. Many trips since. Today our daughter arrived. Her first trip was at 5 months old. Now grandsons help us over the portages, starting our 3rd week today.
When I go out to the park myself, I go to a certain lake and I see a certain campsite, and right away my mind goes back to the 10 years ago when I was on that campsite with a certain person and all the things that happened to me there. Or when I see a certain little rock sticking out of the water and I knew that 10 years ago I cast a spoon there and caught a 10-pound pickerel. And it just brings back the past.
From a personal perspective, I think the park is a sanctuary. It's an area where, if I'm traveling into it, I'm traveling in that park on its terms. I have to go at its pace. I can't take any motorized transportation. I can't take all the amenities and all the niceties that generally support my life. I have to go on its terms. But even more intriguing, I think, is that when you're in the park, everything around you sustains itself totally onto itself. It has no need for me. I have to know my role. In essence, I become like them. Maybe the animal dimension comes out. I don't know.
The first time I came to the park, I wanted to pretend I was the first person that had ever been here in my life. I just didn't want anybody to tell me anything about it. I wanted to discover it. And I remember lying or sleeping at night and just like not sleeping, like waiting till dawn. Quetico needs light, and just as the light comes, it brings everything to life, and it makes you look and see, like it's your guide. That's sort of the way it happened for me.
I believe that if people took the time to let themselves feel it, to become one with it, that we would collectively be much more appreciative of what we have, and more sensitive to the needs of natural landscapes, the lakes and the forests. I think we'd be much more aware of the value of nature onto itself.
Tom Klein, author of Border Country, captured the full significance of Quetico when he wrote, "More than the sum of its parts, the region transcends its value as a stage for 2-week vacations or a laboratory for scientists and resource managers. It becomes a vital presence, an absorbing home for the rich traditions of its native people, a home for the spiritual values of the thousands of travelers, starting with the voyageurs, who have left something of themselves along the portage trails and at campsites. A home, of course, for the timber wolf, the moose, the lake trout, the loon and the raven, and most importantly, a home for silence."
Well, I've come to really consider myself a part of the park. And to me, it's something like a shelter from everything else that's going on outside the park. I just love Quetico. I never want to leave it.
If you'd like to continue exploring Ontario's provincial parks, consider purchasing the following packages. A handy guidebook to 256 provincial parks is available for $19. For $35, there's the beautifully illustrated book, Islands of Hope, Ontario's Parks and Wilderness. If you'd like both of these items, the price is $52. Package prices do not include the $4 shipping and handling charge or GST. To order, call Toronto 445-5333. Long distance 1-800-663-1800.